The hero party has successfully sealed the demon lord away. While this marks a monumental triumph, the danger isn't entirely over. Unless they manage to defeat him completely, the world will remain under threat of annihilation. The group is weighed down by guilt for failing to finish their mission, but their leader reassures them that all hope is not lost. He firmly believes that one day in the future a new hero will rise to continue their legacy and finally put an end to the demon lord for good. Several years later, the Ankh Party Thunderpike is in the middle of a public dungeon raid. While the two fighters attack, the magic users begin casting their spells, and thanks to the buffs from the party's supporter, Yuka, they are able to take a Hydra down in record time. Individually, the members of Thunderpike are already really strong, but when they work together, they are nearly unbeatable, which is part of the reason why they have so many fans. However, although they might appear to be the perfect team on the surface, it turns out they don't get along as well as you might think. In fact, once the stream wraps up the Red Mage, Yuka informs the team that he's leaving Thunderpike effective immediately. The party leader, Simon, questions why he's choosing to quit, and Yuka explains that he isn't receiving a fair share of their reward money. The amount he got today is so small that he might have to consider taking out payday loans, a situation he's determined to avoid. Simon tries to justify Yuka's low pay by claiming that Yuka isn't contributing enough to the party, and Barry chimes in to point out that Yuka never actually engages in any battles. All he ever does is burn through their items. Durability with his pointless enchantments. Yuka can't believe Barry would call his enchantments useless, but Barry isn't the only one who feels that way. The only one who actually thinks Yuka is useful is Jamie, but that's just because he's good at setting up their streams. Camila tells Yuka that if he wants to earn more, he needs to contribute more actively as a team member. However, Yuka disagrees, arguing that she doesn't have the right to say that, since she's a healer and he's constantly protecting her during battles. He believes the lack of appreciation for his efforts is exactly why he's decided to leave the party. But Simon questions whether Yuka is truly confident he can manage on his own after leaving. Simon reminds him that the only reason Yuka even holds a B rank is because they are childhood friends, and Simon did him a favor by allowing him to join Thunderpike. He also points out that even if Yuka leaves, the team will get along just fine without him, since they clearly don't think Yuka deserves to be paid. Well, Yuka definitely isn't going to stick around. Yuka has wasted the last 5 years of his life supporting this party, and they would never have gotten this far without his help. But the others still all think he's useless, so they won't miss him at all. Now that Yuka has officially left Thunderpike, he makes his way to the guild receptionist to inquire about any available work. She's surprised to see a well-known adventurer like him looking for a job and asks if something happened with Thunderpike. Yuka explains that he's quit the team. The receptionist doesn't seem particularly shocked, as situations like this are fairly common, and hands Yuka a form to fill out so she can assign him to a new party. Once he's done filling out the form, he hands it to the receptionist, but just then a girl comes running up to him for a big hug. The girl's name is Marina, and she used to be one of Yuka's students back when he taught preliminary adventurer classes half a year ago. Yuka is glad she's doing all right. She's curious about why Yuka is here, so she asks him and he tells her that he's currently looking for a new party since he recently left Thunderpike. Marina doesn't even let Yuka finish his sentence, because if he's searching for a new party, she would absolutely love to have her beloved teacher join hers. Yuka agrees to her offer, and a few minutes later he's seated with Marina and the rest of her party to discuss the possibility of him joining. Silk is thrilled about the idea of Yuka becoming part of their group, but she's surprised that such an experienced adventurer would want to join a D-rank party like theirs. Yuka is currently B-rank, so he could probably get into a much better party, but he doesn't mind being in a D-rank party, and, to be honest, he actually prefers it this way. Back when he was in Thunderpike, they would always take on high-level missions, so Yuka would have to buy a ton of magic items to prepare, which left him in constant debt. That's why he wants to take it easy for a while and just deal with some low-level quests. Instead, with Marina, Silk, and Rain all agreeing to the idea, Yuka officially becomes a member of their party. Their first mission together is to gather magic iron ore from the Paintao Mine Dungeon. It's been a long time since Yuka has felt this kind of excitement about a mission, and it brings back many nostalgic memories from his early days as an adventurer. Yuka recalls that this dungeon has a lot of magic oil on the 6th floor, and Silk tells him he is correct, but they were hoping to avoid fighting the 5th floor boss, so Yuka suggests they should start on the 4th floor instead. As they enter the dungeon, Marina takes the lead and uses a stick to check for any traps that may have been set. Yuka is so proud because she's doing it exactly how he taught her. For now, Yuka asks Marina to let him take the lead, explaining that he has a more efficient way to handle the situation. Marina is confused, as their party doesn't have a scout or thief to detect traps. While that's true, Yuka reveals that he has a magic item that can help in this scenario. It's a detection lamp which, thanks to a special type of oil, illuminates traps, allowing them to spot them just as effectively as a scout would. The lamp really is useful, but but Silk asks if it's okay for Yuka to be using it, since special oil sounds really expensive, and yes, it normally is, but Yuka made this oil with his alchemy, so it didn't cost him much. The party continues walking down the corridor while carefully avoiding all the traps, until eventually Yuka stops everyone because he can sense something ahead. He warns the others, advising them to get ready for a fight. Together they charge in and come face to face with a group of boggles. Silk decides to take the initiative and fires the first shot to take one of the boggles down, while Marina runs in to hammer the rest. As she does this, Yuka casts overlapping physical enchantments on her so she can fight better, and at the same time he casts a dew on the boggles to trip them up. While the boggles are disoriented, Marina goes in for her attack, and in one fluid motion, she's able to cut both of them in half, something even she is surprised by. She turns around to ask Yuka if that feeling she just experienced was his magic. Yuka confirms that he had cast 3 types of enchantments on Marina to help with her fight. Rain is amazed that Yuka managed to cast 3 enchantments simultaneously and without even using an incantation. However, Yuka doesn't think it's anything special and simply tells them they should keep moving as they make their way deeper into the mine. He asks the girls about their usual routine for dungeon exploration. Marina, beaming with pride, explains that they always take a break after each floor and inspect their equipment, just as he had taught them. Hearing this, Yuka suggests they rest for a while before continuing after their break. Marina and the others check all their equipment for damage, and everything seems to be in working order. So they are ready to continue their mission and head down to the next floor. On the second floor of the dungeon, the group is suddenly ambushed by a group of undead miners, and the only way to get rid of them is for Rain to use holy magic. Everyone needs to protect her. While she uses her chant, Marina and Silk plan to handle the defense, but Yuka tells them he has this covered. He casts a blessing of light on all of them, and while it won't kill the undead miners, it does stop them from coming closer. So it's a good defensive measure. Eventually, Rain completes the holy light spell, using it to eradicate the undead. Once they're safe, Marina begins praising Rain for a job well done. Yuka also commends her, pointing out that very few people can wield light magic on the scale she just demonstrated. However, casting such a powerful spell likely consumed a significant amount of her mana, so Yuka casts Refresh Mana to help her recover. Rain is astonished that Yuka can use Fresh Mana, a rare skill that fully restores the mana of whoever it's cast on. She notes that possessing such a skill alone would make Yuka incredibly valuable to any party. But Yuka downplays her reaction, explaining that he only learned Refresh Mana to make up for having an obscure job like a red mage, though mastering it had been exceptionally difficult for him. Afterward, the group continues walking down the path, and as they go, Yuka begins pouring a liquid on the ground. Silk asks him what he's doing, so Yuka explains that he is pouring holy water over their footprints to stop undead monsters from following them. Silk is worried and asks if it's really okay for him to waste his holy water like that, since it's really expensive. But Yuka tells her it's fine, since once again he made this himself. The group is in shock that Yuka is able to make holy water, even though he isn't a priest. But he has a special method for it, by purifying the ashes left behind by the undead. When they are defeated, Yuka is able to process it into holy water, and the ashes he got from the undead miners will be more than enough to make up for the amount of holy water he's using. By the time they reach the 3rd floor, Yuka suggests taking another break, since they'll be starting the mining process from this point onward. Noticing that it's been a while since they last ate, he pulls out some cooking utensils from his magic bag and announces that he'll prepare a meal for them. While magic bags aren't particularly rare, this is Rain's first time seeing one in person, and she's visibly excited. Yuka places some sausage and eggs in a pan, and as they cook he retrieves a special pot from the bag. The girls watch as he taps on the side of the pot, and it instantly fills up. Yuka explains that the pot is a rare artifact that he found in a royal palace ruin. It basically fills up with a random soup every time you use it, so it's really handy to have. The girls are really grateful to Yuka, since this is the first time they've gotten to have such a good meal while in the middle of a dungeon mission. But when Silk takes a closer look at the food, she realizes that it has mana radiating out of it. She asks Yuka about it, but he tells her there's nothing special about the food, since all he did was prepare it with lots of love. His alchemy skills might have accidentally enchanted the food. However, it shouldn't be a problem. The group finally reaches the 4th floor of the dungeon, where they are confronted by a rock lizard. As the monster charges toward them, Yuka casts a slow spell, causing it to nearly freeze in place. Seizing the opportunity, Marina charges forward to attack, a move she wouldn't normally attempt. However, with Yuka's enchantments enhancing her strength and stamina, she decides to use her magic blade ability. With a single decisive stripe, she slices off the rock lizard's head. Once the fight is over, Marina is totally exhausted, since magic blade uses up a ton of her mana. But Yuka encourages her to keep using it as much as possible, because eventually her body will get used to it. But for now he cast Refresh Mana to help her recover. Anyway, there were a lot of magic ores here, so Yuka begins mining with the girls. After a little, while they maneuver to gather a ton of magic ores, Yuka asks if they've collected enough to meet the requirements of their quest, but Silk replies that they still need a bit more. Unfortunately, there aren't any more magic ores left on this floor, leaving them with only one option: defeat the 5th floor boss and descend to the 6th floor to gather the remaining ores. The girls are uneasy about this plan, as the 5th floor boss is the steel crab and they're unsure if they can survive against such a formidable foe. However, Yuka reassures them not to worry, promising to handle the boss himself to the best of his ability. A little while later they arrive at the boss's room, but before they head in, Yuka pulls out a camera artifact. Rain recognizes the artifact and asks if Yuka plans to live stream his battle, but he was actually just going to record it. Instead, he always records his battles, so he can study his mistakes later. If he's going to be recording anyway, Marina asks him to make it a live stream, since she thinks it will be a lot of fun. Yuka agrees to live stream his fight, but as he's setting it up, he realizes he doesn't know the name of their party. He asks the others, and Silk admits they haven't actually come up with a party name yet. In fact, they aren't even officially registered. Hearing this, Yuka asks if they have any ideas for a team name. Marina thinks for a moment before suggesting the name Clover, specifically a 4-leaf clover, to symbolize their 4 members. Everyone loves the idea, and from that moment on they decide to be known as Clover. Just then Yuka realizes that this is going to be her party's first live stream, and he'd feel bad if he was the only one in the spotlight. So he asks the others if they want to help him fight the boss, but they all tell him that it's fine for him to handle it solo. In that case, Yuka isn't going to hold back. He casts Great Blink Shadow and Protector Shield buffs on himself, and then enters the boss room. The steel crab awakens and immediately lunges at Yuka, but he uses his speed buffs to swiftly dodge the attack. Once he's safely out of its range, he begins bombarding the crab with a series of debuff spells. After sufficiently weakening it, Yuka casts a gravity spell, slamming the steel crab against the floor and crushing it. With that, the boss is defeated, and it didn't even take him a full minute. Yuka feels quite satisfied with his performance. He then ends the stream, and Marina runs up to hug him for being so amazing, but she's hugging him a little too hard. The others ask her to let go before Yuka ends up in a wheelchair. After making sure his back is fine, Yuka tells everyone that they should bring the steel crab's body back to the guild so they can sell the parts. He stores the entire thing in his magic bag, which is a huge help, since they never would have been able to carry it back by themselves. So far, Yuka has proven to be an invaluable asset to their party, but Silk feels it's unfair for them to rely on him so heavily. In response, Yuka suggests that during their next boss battle, everyone should participate to gain some experience. The girls like the idea, but for now, they still need to open the treasure chest they earned for defeating the floor boss. When they open the chest, they discover a large stash of magic ores, meaning they won't have to do any more mining after all. Dungeon streams are incredibly popular worldwide, serving as an excellent platform for publicity. Major companies frequently offer sponsorship deals to well-known streamers, and right now Yuka's fame is soaring to new heights. The video showcasing his triumph over the steel crab using only status effect spells has gone viral, drawing massive attention. As Yuka and his companions make their way back home in the carriage, he takes a moment to ask them about their impressions of their first mission together. The girls are thrilled. They absolutely love the experience. They picked up all sorts of amazing skills and insights from Yuka, making this their most rewarding mission. Yet in fact, they've been seriously considering naming Yuka as the official leader of their party. With his extensive experience and the unwavering trust they've placed in him as their mentor, it feels like a natural decision for the group. Yuka feels reluctant to take on the role, as he never intended to lead Marina's party. However, since everyone insists that they want him to step up, he ultimately agrees, mainly to ensure their safety in future battles. While Yuka's group is busy celebrating their first victory, things are going downhill fast for Thunderpike. Simon, trying to fill the gap left by Yuka's departure, hired a new recruit. Unfortunately, it seems Simon still hasn't grasped just how much Yuka contributed to the team. The new guy led the group straight into wolf territory, assuming everything would somehow work out. Normally, Yuka would have already cast a weakening spell on the wolves to level the playing field, but the replacement lacks that ability, leaving the wolves far too powerful for the party to handle. Jamie ends up getting bitten. Simon sees Jamie in danger and immediately rushes to her rescue, managing to decapitate the wolf. While Jamie is technically out of immediate harm, her stomach is riddled with wounds, and without treatment, she won't survive for long. Desperate, Simon turns to Camila and asks her to cast a healing spell, but she explains that she's completely out of mana, leaving her unable to help. After all, it's not like they had a guide capable of casting a mana restoration spell. The group retreats to a safer spot, and Simon does his best to administer first aid, trying to keep Jamie alive while waiting for Camila's mana to replenish, hoping for another solution. He asks if anyone has a healing potion. Quark, the The new recruit happens to have one, but he hesitates to hand it over. Simon had made it abundantly clear that everyone was responsible for purchasing their own gear, so Quark doesn't feel particularly inclined to share his supplies. Simon tells him that now is not the time to be worrying about money when one of his teammates is about to die. So Quark reluctantly hands over the healing potion, and Simon feeds it to Johnny. Thunderpike has really been on a downward spiral lately, but on the flip side, everything has been working out for Yuka. He and the girls are sitting at the bar to celebrate, and while the reward for their quest wasn't that high, the steel crab's body was in good condition, so the guild paid a good price for it. Speaking of money, Yuka asks Marina and the others what system they've been using to split up the party's earnings. They explain to Yuka that Silk is the one who manages all the party's money, with each member receiving a set allowance. Yuka is a bit surprised, as it's uncommon for an entire group to entrust their finances to a single person. But the group has a clear reason for this arrangement. They've all been diligently saving to eventually buy a house together, as constantly renting rooms at the inn feels awkward in the long term. Understanding their goal, Yuka assures them that he's fine with continuing the allowance system. Silk, a little taken aback, asks if he's really okay with her managing all the finances, thinking that an adventurer like him might prefer handling his own money. However, Yuka reassures her that he trusts her completely, so there's no need to change a system that's already working for them. While Yuka and the others are having fun and getting along, Simon and the rest of Underpike are upset because that was the worst outcome they've had in years. Thankfully, they were able to save Jam's life, but things could have gone really badly, and Simon blames it all on Quark. The rest of the party joins in and starts calling Quark useless for not being able to get them out of that mess. But Quark isn't going to let them put the blame on him, since everyone knows that dire wolves track their prey through scent. So it's common sense to buy a beast repellent in preparation for the mission. The situation was clearly the party's fault for not being properly prepared, but Simon tries to shift the blame onto Quark. He argues that if Quark knew about the beast repellent, he should have told them, and even goes as far as to claim that Jammy, almost dying, is entirely Quark's fault for not buying beast repellent for everyone. The level of gaslighting is intense, but fortunately, it doesn't fool Quark, realizing he wants nothing to do with a group where no one takes responsibility for their own mistakes. He decides to quit the party on the spot. Yuko overhears this, and he can't believe Thunderpike still hasn't learned from their mistakes, but that doesn't concern him anymore. He turns back to the girls, and Marina tells everyone what they should do for tomorrow. Silk remembers something Yuka once told her about it being important to take a day off after every mission. So she suggests that they do that. Everyone agrees, and since Yuka is going to have the day off, he decides to get a little shopping done. He needs to stock up on potions and scrolls, and he still needs to turn those dead ashes he got into holy water so he can replenish his stock. He's going to be busy for a while, so he suggests that they all meet back up here after their break is over. At that moment, Marina notices that the day dungeon stream highlights are being broadcast, and Yuka's fight against the steel crab has taken the #1 spot. Yuka is stunned as he only uploaded the footage a few hours ago, but it's already garnered over 6,000 viewers, with the numbers still climbing. Viewers are fascinated by how someone with a lesser-known job like a red mage was able to defeat a steel crab without even laying a finger on it. The announcers urge everyone to watch out for Yuka and his party, Clover, hinting that they could potentially rise to become the world's greatest adventuring team. Simon and the other members of Thunderpike see Yuka's stream as well, and they are all incredibly jealous that Yuka is actually doing well without them, but they still refuse to admit that Yuka might have been more useful to them than they gave him credit for. Thunderpike is always going to be a bunch of haters, but it looks like there is actually someone else hating on Yuka from a distance, and he seems mad that Yuka is getting comfortable with his new party. A few days later, Yuka finds himself back at the guild, scanning the notice board for quests that might suit the girls. Noticing his indecision, the receptionist approaches and asks if she can assist him. Yuka explains that he's looking for quests that are simple enough for a group of beginners, but still offer a decent payout. The receptionist chuckles and tells him he's being a bit too optimistic. Such a perfect quest doesn't really exist. Still considering his situation, she recommends a C-rank quest involving the collection of magic stones from the Orden Lakeside Forest. Yuka thinks this just might work, but he's a little curious as to why the quest is C-rank when fetching magic stones is usually only D-rank. The receptionist explains that there has been a large magical beast sighted near the forest, so this quest is slightly more dangerous than normal. Just then Marina enters the guild, and as soon as she hears the word quest, she immediately yells that their party will accept it. Yuka asks her to at least let him finish explaining before she agrees to do the quest. But Marina says she doesn't need to know the details, since if Yuka thinks they can handle it, then she is sure they'll be able to get it done. It shouldn't be too hard anyway, since she and the others have done a quest in that forest before. However, she doesn't understand why this quest would be C-rank when all the other quests are D-rank. Yuka then speaks up explaining that the quest is classified as C-rank because a magical beast has recently been spotted in the forest. Hearing this makes the girls hesitate, questioning whether they should take on the quest after all. However, they ultimately decide to go for for it, reasoning that as long as Yuka is with them, everything will turn out fine. With that settled, Yuko instructs them to prepare their items and meet him an hour later at the Stagia coach so they can head to the forest just as they're wrapping up. The receptionist returns with the quest receipt, and something about the timing feels a little too convenient. Yuko questions whether the receptionist orchestrated this outcome, and she doesn't deny having a hand in it. She points out that the stream Yuka made yesterday earned over 10,000 views, and now everyone is eager to see what he'll do next. Embarrassed, Yuka admits he hadn't expected his stream to gain so much attention. He sees no harm in continuing to stream his fights, since it'll bring attention to the girls, and if they happen to find that magical beast, having it on video would be great for the guild's records. While Yuka was talking about all this, the man from before is getting more and more infuriated. As Yuka leaves the guild, the man follows him. Yuka immediately realizes that he's being followed, since the guy is doing a terrible job at it. So he ducks into an alleyway to get away. He was hoping to lose his stalker, but for a fat guy he's pretty quick and catches up to Yuka. Yuka asks him if he has any business with him, so the man demands that Yuka quit Clover immediately. Yuka obviously says that's not going to happen, especially since he's the leader of the party. The man can't believe the girls made Yuka their leader after just one day together, especially when he begged to join their party countless times only to be rejected. Yuka quickly pieces together the situation. This guy clearly wanted to form a harem of cute adventure girls, but Marina and the others refused to let him join. Now seeing someone else living his dream has made him lose his cool. Frustrated, the man draws his sword, threatening to attack unless Yuka agrees to leave the girls' party. Staying calm, Yuka quietly casts a snare trap at the man's feet and begins walking away. True to form, the man attempts to strike Yuka as he leaves, but the trap activates, causing him to slip and fall flat on the ground. Once Yuka boards the carriage, he casually tells the girls about his strange encounter. They recognize the guy as Beso and tell Yuka that the guy has been trying to join their party for so long. They ask if Yuka is all right, since they would hate it if something bad were to happen to him because of them. But Yuka assures them it's not their fault. Besides, he left that guy unconscious in the middle of the street, so they can just report him when they get back to town. In the meantime, before they get to their destination, Yuko wants to go over their mission objective one last time. They're going to fetch 3 magic stones from the Orton Forest, and since the others say they've been here before, he asks them what it was like when they got here. According to Marina, they had been here 2 months ago, but now that she thinks about it, she didn't run into any monsters at all. After hearing this, Yuka concludes that the magical beast must have already been in the forest 2 months ago. He decides that if they encounter it, he'll live stream the fight. This way the guild will gain valuable information about the creature, and if they can't defeat it, they'll have an easy way to call for backup. Once they arrive at the forest, Yuka starts the stream and the group begins making their way through the dense terrain. Yuka chooses to take up the position of rear guard, reasoning that beasts often attack from behind. Concerned, Marina asks if it's really safe for him to stay at the rear, given that it's the most dangerous spot. Yuka reassures her, explaining that he has blink step to escape if things get dire, and that his clothes are equipped with excellent defense stats, allowing him to take a few hits before going down. They soon reach the waterfall, where they are meant to gather the magic stone, but just before they can get there, Yuka tells everyone to wait because he can sense something coming. The magic beast finally reveals itself, but all the confidence Yuka had earlier goes out the window, because that thing is a high-level monster that's usually only found in the deepest parts of the dungeon. It's Zarek. The girls are nowhere near strong enough to handle this thing or even survive a minute against it, so Yuka gets in front of them and tells Silk to lead the others back to the Adventurers Guild and get back up while he holds this thing off here. However, the girls know that Yuka doesn't stand a chance against that thing either if he is fighting solo, so they refuse to leave his side, otherwise he might really die. Yuka can't argue with their determination, so he agrees to let them fight alongside him and quickly casts enchantment spells on the group. He and Marina take the front line, with Marina charging in first. However, the Zareg effortlessly swats her aside, like she's nothing. Yuko attempts to use his layered status effects on the beast. While it manages to disorient the Zareg slightly, it doesn't deal much damage, leaving him with few viable options. With no other choice, Yuka decides to bet everything on one powerful move. However, he needs time to cast the spell, so he asks Marina to keep the monster distracted. Marina agrees and gets up close to the Zareg, doing her best to hold its attention while dodging its attacks. When she's about to be caught, Silk and Rain step in with their magic to assist, ensuring she stays in the fight long enough for Yuka to finish a spell. Thanks to their teamwork, Yuka has enough time to complete the level 5 spell, a devastating prismatic missile. With the spell fully charged, he launches it directly at the beast's face. Watch this next video on screen and subscribe to not miss next part.